Hey guys, it's Jay here with another Ordeal video. So today we are finally going to take a look at the trailer that Brent dropped, which would be on 12/2, which is December the 2nd, right? I'm sure everybody's excited to finally get to see the trailer. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out for yourself. I will be showing it in the actual video, but Brent did drop it on his Instagram, which will be up on the actual screen, right? Also in regards to the trailer, let's also give a special shout out to, I hope I'm not saying your name wrong, Hamiel or Jamie something, the animator on Instagram. I will also be putting that up. Make sure you guys go check out his stuff. He is the one who created the actual trailer we're going to be able to look at, right? With that out the way, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share with others. Without further ado, onto the vid. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the actual trailer itself. Okay, so the trailer was only 43 seconds. However, we did get a bit of decent information just out of those 43 seconds, okay? So the first thing we see is, of course, it's going to be Shay in the background with Norigiri in the foreground. We've seen this picture before. I have discussed it on the channel in my season 3 promo breakdown, but this is going to be a presumed Andrea versus Shay fight. I think everybody assumes that this is what this is going to be. I don't think anybody is against that happening. I think the community is very okay with this being what is the concept here, right? And it would only make sense considering there's really no reason for Shay and Andrea to just not fight. I mean, it's very in character for Andrea to be sent out by code to do missions, and of course she has a very close connection to Shay and the other wolf cubs, so it makes a lot of sense that she would be the one sent to deal with Shay, or to try and, bring him into code or send him to Patmos, however that may look. I did say in my video that this also might be Shay trying to fight and free Andrea from Norigiri's control. I think that's a possibility, though I don't think it is as much anymore. However, I do still think that Shay will end up getting Norigiri. I did mention that in the video as well. There is a picture that shows Shay holding something in that looks like a stick, potential spear. And I do think that might be Norigiri. Brent did say we don't know a lot of the things that Shay has when he is Ronin, so it would be very interesting for Norigiri to be one of those things, right? But aside from that, this should just be a definitive Shay versus Andrea fight. The real question is, when will this take place during the actual season? It could be mid-season, it could be late season. Now, there is another picture of Hanjiro and Aldrich with another person at the site where this fight should be taking place. So this fight may actually have happened earlier on in the season, or in the time skip between season 2 to season 3, and then we might end up seeing it potentially earlier on. If we don't see it mid to late season, we could actually see it earlier on in the season, and then we will see Aldrich with Hanjiro and the third person actually discussing and talking about the things that happened here. I think that picture might allude to it being, this fight being more of like a flashback, which is why we could get it earlier on, due to it potentially happening in that time skip vague sort of space, right? So next we saw a mysterious character veiled in what looks like sand. This character might end up being the proposed Sand Gakki or Prince of Persia sand character that Brent mentioned during the Q&A that is up on my channel, which would make sense since he is kind of veiled in like a sand type of theme when the trailer actually is playing. He also should clearly be a Gakki since he has the metallic features that Gakki and Titan General specifically seem to express, right? Now, one thing I do want to note is that he does have some attire that looks like something we have actually seen before, and that is going to be the little sash that Ronin Shay actually wears on his right side, okay? I'm gonna try and zoom it in on the actual video so that you guys can see it, but if I'm not mistaken, this does have the same green type of hue and in the same pattern that that sash also has, right? If this is true, that kind of begs the question of how did Shay acquire this, right? This could be a character that Shay runs into and he actually fights, which would make the most sense. And then he defeats him, and then he simply just takes a part of the sash as like a trophy, the way we eventually see him have like Titan General heads on his belt. It might be something similar to that. This could also be, if you want to look on the brighter sides of things, this could also be a character that Shay runs into, fights, and then they sort of get along or bond or something like that, and this character ends up dying to someone else, and then in memory of them, Shay takes on a part of the sash he has. I think we could go either way. I think the first one is more likely, but it would be interesting to see one of the villain characters be a good guy or be more neutral, or one of the first kind of acolytes or allies Shay has that isn't the wolf cubs or code and things like that, just for him to end up dying, and then Shay ends up taking a part of him, right, and kind of keeping in remembrance of somebody who ended up being his friend, right? Because we do know there is going to be a lot of death next season, so it would be very interesting for something like this to play into the actual season and Shay's character development, right? And next we have the Gakki adjacent character that Brent told us about during the Q&A as well. He did say he was Gakki adjacent, similar to that of like a Gakki Hand. So this might be a sort of backup type of character among others that are Gakki level or like hand level characters that just didn't make the cut as actual Gakki. Now we know this is actually the case because Minamoto asks the Beast Gakki how many of them there are, and the Beast Gakki says that there are 11 of them. He says, if I'm not mistaken, my father has 11 sons, right? But then he also says, at least that's all I know of, implying that there are more Gakki type of characters out there, right? And this is of course going to be one of them. So it's going to be very interesting to see who this character fights, who he actually is, how he interacts with other characters around him. Will he, be arrogant? Will he be like a character like Cass who thinks he deserves to be a Gakki? I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he interacts with people. But I also think it'll be very interesting to see what his abilities are, because he seems to have these black holes, but then he also has these large wings, potentially reminiscent of like maybe like a bird shift, but then he also has like a power or elemental related talent depending on what his actual abilities are, right? We definitely know that he is going to be fighting someone based off this image, just because of the sheer amount of rubble that is around. I feel like this isn't just for hype. I feel like this is going to be either something he actively does in the world, and then he kind of sits there and ponders or whatever, or this is the actual same scene where a fight he will be in takes place, which I think will be very interesting as well. So the next two pictures are actually going to be a back-to-back thing. The first one is Elsa and Kevin when they were kids, and then the second one is going to be Leo, a younger Leo, fending off Kane's goons when they were children, right? Now, we obviously know this is Kevin and Elsa based on their designs, right? And then also the transition to Leo obviously suggests that this is Elsa and Kevin, right? However, Brent did say that this season will focus a little bit on Kevin, so this might actually be a flashback of these events from his perspective, right? Which I think would be very interesting, because we get those events from Leo's perspective, because he's like the initial setup character for the entire series. Essentially, all of the characters that are good guys in our main cast follow his morals, his values, right? And then we know that God tier are also people who carry Leo's sense of morality. But we don't really know much about Kevin as much as we know about Leo, right? We know that obviously that's his brother-in-law because Leo marries Elsa later on, but we only know that they share a talent that has relation, which I think is interesting in its own accord, but we could talk about that at a different time, right? And then of course the next picture is just Leo fighting off somebody. Depending on how this actual goes, we might just get a sort of retelling, like I said, through Kevin's perspective, which I think would be kind of cool, especially since Brent's art style is a bit more higher quality than it was when the first season actually came out. So to get these events, redrawn in a way, but also through the perspective of a different character, is going to be cool to see. This also kind of begs the question of, if Leo knew he was a Kimyo and he had one of the Great Four talents, when did Kevin's talent develop and actually reveal itself, right? Which I think is something we might also get to see next season, since it will kind of focus on him. I think that contrast will be cool, right? Since we literally saw when Leo's talent, not necessarily when it showed up, but we actually get to see him use it actively, and then also as a grown man. I think it would be kind of cool to see something like that, similar to Kevin, who also grows up, finally has a talent, and then gets to help the army, but in a different way, because Leo is essentially a hero, but we don't know anything of Kevin. We know Elsa is also in the army, but like I said, nothing about Kevin himself, right? And so next up is going to be something that we have also seen similar to Shay vs. Andre and the Gakki Hand character. That is going to be the Heart clan with Malhazar in the center and all of his grandkids around him. Now, I did make a video regarding these characters and Malhazar not too long ago. This picture was also drawn live by Brent and then put on his Instagram. So we have seen this picture before, but it being included in the trailer is interesting because that means that this is actually going to be a definitive thing we're gonna see next season, right? We might see the full formation of the Heart Clan through Malhazar. We might see these characters fight. We might get to see these characters how their clan develops from sort of their perspectives, right? I'm very excited to see the Heart Clan as a whole. Brent also said in the Discord, based off a question I asked, that the Heart Clan gets special treatment and that will be revealed to us in the first episode of next season. So we're gonna get to see something regarding the Heart Clan, some sort of information. It could be this flashback, it could be something else. It might still lead to this, who knows, until we actually see it. But I am very excited for this as a whole. I mean, Malhazar is one of the characters that was mentioned at the very end of the season, and we know that obviously he's the founder of the Heart Clan. He is a Thanatos vessel, but he did not be overcome by Thanatos' will, and he was able to form the Heart Clan essentially out of his own desire, right? Sort of in rebellion to Thanatos, right? So it's going to be very cool to see and read how the Heart Clan is formed, some more history on Malhazar as a whole. I don't think we'll get a lot, but I do think we'll get enough to substantiate our curiosity on him as a whole, right? This also could mean that we'll just overall get more Heart Clan information. I don't think we will, but we might get to see some of the other scattered members. We might get to see certain Heart Clan things regarding Shay, or specifically regarding Yukiko, since she does have that more physical resemblance that I mentioned in my video. But I'm very excited to see anything regarding the Heart Clan overall. So next is going to be another character. Now, I am of the opinion that this is actually Kevin. However, the actual context is unknown. My initial theory is that this is Kevin when he actually activated his talent, and this is what led him to like the fusion of him and the Katai Gita talent, right? That's my initial theory, but this could also be based on the tears we see and that played when the actual trailer was going. This could actually be Kevin finding out that Leo died, right? Since we know he showed up at the end of the season, and then we see Kevin land where the 10th Lord is, but he is still uninformed, and the 10th Lord actually says she has to keep them there to inform him, right? So this might be Kevin, raging out, going berserk, or essentially just flexing his power in response to his emotions, finding out that Leo is dead, right? However, it would be also interesting to see Kevin using his talent, and then as a result of that, the actual merger. I think it would be cool for Brent to show us that. I think he will, but who really knows until we actually see it, right? I do want to see Kevin use his talent, of course, since we got to see Kat Haigita use it, but I would love to see how Kevin actually uses it and how it's different maybe overall from the actual Kat Haigita himself, because Kat Haigita uses it more essentially as just lightning, but technically his talent is more labeled as storm, so there should be more to it than just the lightning, right? And then also, Kevin is fused with the talent. He is chi, an outer shell of skin, right? So that means he should be able to output more than a normal Kimyo can, right? Which just makes sense. So I'm very excited to see how he's going to be able to use his talent, potentially in different ways than you would expect, and how the talent overall works specifically for him as a sort of anomaly to talent users, right? So the next two pictures are also going to be back to back, and they are both regarding the four pillars, right? I'm not really sure where the actual scene of this is. This might just be where they technically reside at. It could also just be a visual thing. The next picture following is them actually going somewhere. This specific scene could be them essentially leaving to go fight something. We know that because of Brent in the Q&A, he says the five pillars have an important role in the overall world of Ordeal, but he did not disclose what that role is, so we are going to get to see what the actual role itself is. In regards to the pillars themselves, there is five of them, but we haven't been revealed the actual fifth pillar. Currently, my favorite one is going to be the one in the bottom with the sword. I like characters with swords, which is why I like Sabito. He also just has a cleaner look than everybody else. I'd say as of right now, it would be him and then the girl and then the bald guy and then like the more tech type of dude. But that can change depending on who and what the fifth pillar looks like. Brent did say that that pillar was his favorite design wise, but they all kind of share a similar white like clad design, so I wonder how much differentiated that pillar actually is, assuming that pillar is also the leader, right? If it isn't like the sword character. And I only say that because of how he's like in front of everybody else when they're walking in the next picture, but I do think the fifth pillar might actually be their sort of leader, right? If that is the case though. Now I don't think we can tell too much on what their talents are based on this visual, but we can clearly see that the sword guy uses his sword. I think this is a consistency for how he fights, similar to Sabito. But I think the Balder character, I think he might have a sort of lava adjacent talent or something along those lines based on the hammer he wields and then like the little pack he has on his back, right? It kind of gives off like a molten lava type of feel, but I could be wrong about that. I feel like these guys have a little bit more, I just feel like they have a little bit more tech relating to them based on their designs. Like the sword one, he might have like a jet type of thing going based on his like shoulder pads or something, but who knows honestly. And I think the guy with the glasses, the last one, I think he just has a tech related talent altogether, and we haven't actually seen any talents that specifically deal with technology. Most of them have a sort of means of interacting with things naturally occurring or creating things that are formed out of chi but that aren't still technically tech based, right? Which is why the Gakki are tech enhanced, because technology in the Ordeal verse essentially just adds to the power of a talent, right? So it would be interesting for this character to have a tech based talent, right? And then the girl, I don't really know what her deal is. She looks clean, but like she has this long like halberd spear type of weapon thing. Not really sure what's going on with her, but like I said, she is the second cleanest out of them all. It's gonna be really good to see them. I can't wait to dive into what their actual role is in the world, because Brent also said that they work with code, but they don't technically work under code. Essentially, like they're allies and they do have to report to code, but they don't really work for them. They are still autonomous, right? So it is going to be very interesting to see what their actual role is in the world, right? And considering how important it is also going to be interesting to see what their ranks are. Since Brent said he wouldn't disclose what their ranks are during the Q&A, we can assume that they're very high up there, at least rank 50 and above, right? We obviously know they're not anywhere from 1 to 20, but any spots in between there to 50 are really up for grabs. So I'm very interested to see like what they entail as a whole. And lastly, we really have another picture that we have seen via Brent's Instagram, which is going to be Shay, presumably in his own mindscape, with the Thanatos version of himself. Personally, I don't think this actual visual is real, as in the sense that the version of himself that was conjured by Thanatos shouldn't still be there, considering it would make a lot of sense for Shay to ask Mahalalo at the end of the season, the end of the actual scene we saw, to send them away permanently, right? But who knows what Shay really has going on in his own head. He could have insisted that this version of himself stay, but Thanatos actually leave. I'm not really sure how that would work, but it could be a possibility, right? This also could essentially just be like a duality picture. Like this might just be a simple, this is the good version of Shay and this is the bad version of Shay. There might not be that much into it. This also might not be something we actually see in the overall season, but if it is, it will be very interesting to see how Shay interacts with himself on occasion. If this is the version of himself that stays lingering in his head, whether it be via Thanatos or via his own subconscious, it will be very interesting to see how he interacts with himself, right? I don't really have too much for this one, honestly, but then The next picture is just a partial Shay we got to see. We get to see what his design will look like when he is not in his mindscape and when he is walking around in the actual world. We see and this was posted beforehand, we do see the 3 Titan heads he has on his hip. We also see Venter behind him as the scene kind of goes up. I'll see if I can slow that down a bit. He still has Venter. Of course, the scar on his eye, he has his earrings, and then he has 2 new earrings, right? But I think we actually see also in the future version of himself during the season 2 premiere. I think he definitely has one of the earrings on. He has another one in his eyebrow, and then so he eventually takes both of these earrings off and then put on one on each ear. I wonder how he acquires these. I wonder if these hold like a special meaning for him since he has them now, and then he also has them in the future. I wonder if they sort of represent something to him. It will be interesting to dive into that. His overall design is very interesting. It's a little barbaric in terms of how it looks, which I think fits how Shay will sort of be in the actual world this season, right? I'm pretty excited to see what Shay does because Brent said that I think the opening parts of season 3 are going to be packed with a lot of Shay doing new stuff. We know he's going to get a new war state design. He might have new abilities, new techniques. We might even just see him fight people outright, you know, which I think would be awesome. Since he is the main character we are following, it would be very cool to see this story open up with him, you know, in a fight, right? And that is the video, guys. Like I said, the trailer was short, but we did get a decent amount of information just off of the pictures we got. I'm pretty excited to see, obviously I'm excited for the Heart Clan. I can't really stress enough how much excitement I have for the Heart Clan, but I am very interested to see who this potential Gakki character is that has the same clothing that we see Shay with in the future, right? I really want to see how the interactions between those 2 characters might end up. I am also excited for a lot more Kevin. I think it would be very cool to see past events through his perspective, and then also either get to see him upset that he wasn't around when Leo died, or we get to see him activate his talent and then essentially fuse with it, right? I think that'll be cool to see if that is the case, right? Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like I said, leave a like, share with others, and I can't wait for Ordeal to come back in a couple more weeks, guys. I will see y'all in the next one.